Do you own a septic system? Well, I mean, obviously you probably do if you're sitting here listening to this video. You've probably been told at some point you should get a riser on your septic system, but you don't know what a riser is. Today, we're gonna talk about risers on your septic system and are they actually worth it? And do you need one? You might be wondering, what is a riser? It's really simple. A riser is a 24-inch round lid in the middle of your tank. Probably doesn't help you though, does it? Let's take a step back here real quick. When you have a septic system, it's basically a large concrete box where once you flush a toilet, run a sink, bathtub, whatever, all that stuff goes to it. The tank is a large clarification area. Its whole purpose is to get the solids out of the liquids. So that way you can have your drain fields work without getting clogged up. In the septic system, there's going to be usually 2 lids at minimum, but most commonly you'll see 3. You have a small one in the front, big one in the middle, and a small one in the back. With modern systems, you might only see a big one in the front and a big one in the back. That's because most modern systems are going to be a 2-chamber system, and they're usually larger than the old ones. In the early 2000s to 2010s, we started making it to where the requirements were to have 2 chambers, and usually the byproduct of that is you end up with a larger system. With these larger systems, it's important to make sure that you're pumping it on an adequate basis. The older systems might have only had one little clean out on the front of the tank. Really old systems might not have even had the clean out on it. The modern iteration of a septic system was basically designed in the 1950s to 1960s. Because it was a newer thing, nobody really had any actual requirements for it. So a lot of times you would end up with a system that would be buried below 1 foot to 3 foot of cover, and you had to dig to it just to open it. You would still open one of the 3 lids that are on the tank. You just had to work a little bit harder to get to it. In the late 60s to early 70s, a lot of places started actually putting cleanouts on the front of the tank. The cleanout's gonna be that little pipe that you see that's either gonna be made of terracotta, cast iron, or PVC. For demonstration purposes, we're just going to discuss the PVC ones because those were more readily available. These cleanouts were good, but they only ever really let you work on the front of the tank. Remember, a septic tank is there to clarify the liquids from the solids. And when they're built, they're usually 8 foot by 4 foot or 10 foot by 5 foot. This size is going to make it to where if you put the cleanout on the front of the tank, you might have a really hard time pumping out the back of the tank. Now, you'll get a lot of people who will tell you, I'm a great pumper, I can pump it no matter how big the tank is. These people are usually wrong. They don't usually get the back of the tank as good as they say they do. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear in order to get the job. Most of the time they just do it so that way you're not going to get upset with them when you eventually get a clog in the back of your tank. There are some times though that those guys will actually do a good enough job getting most of the solids out, but it's far and few between. So if you have a clean out on the front of your tank, you're not cleaning the tank as effectively as you can. Now remember, we've discussed previously that what causes a drain field to fail is the solids leaving your tank and going into the drain field. Drain fields are expensive. They're like 15, 20 grand, if not more, depending on what your perk rate is. You want to make sure that those things last as long as you possibly can get them to last. Otherwise, you get to keep spending money for something you don't need to be doing. So what is a manhole riser? Well, it's the giant lid that goes in the middle of your tank. On the tank, like we discussed in the center, is going to be quite a large lid, and that's where the riser is going to go. Modern systems, the riser will be in the front and the back, so that way you can easily access the inlet and outlet line, just in case you get a clog. But for an old system that you're retrofitting with a riser, it would go in the middle. Having the lid in the middle allows it to where the pumper can navigate the hose to all 4 corners to effectively pump out all of the solids. Risers will come in a variety of shapes and colors. Sometimes they'll be concrete. Sometimes they'll be plastic. Sometimes they'll be metal. Those ones are always the worst though. I don't like the metal ones. You'll pretty much see metal risers on any of the old 1960s, 1970s homes. In Maryland, it'll usually be in houses in the Montgomery County area. You almost never see it anywhere else. Everybody else was using concrete at that time. I'm quite a fanboy when it comes to concrete. I think it lasts the longest. I think it also is the most effective. Nowadays, most people use plastic for cost savings. The plastic ones are nice. They generally are a lot more waterproof and odor-proof than the concrete versions. I usually will recommend the plastic to save a lot of money because it does save a significant amount, and it also makes it a lot easier for the person installing. If you make things a little bit easier for the person installing, they usually will give you a better price. Most of the time. If you're deciding on whether or not you want to get a riser, it's worth every penny because it does help to prevent all that debris from getting into your septic system and causing problems. If you're stuck trying to figure out whether or not to put the riser in, it really comes down to a matter of, do you want your system to last longer, or do you just want to keep it where your yard looks a little bit prettier? I hear a lot of people talk about how the aesthetic of a riser is not all that appealing. They say that it looks ugly. It clutters up the lawn. Now, these are the sorts of things I don't necessarily agree with. My argument would be that if you have a house, you need to maintain your utilities. A utility such as your septic system costs a lot of money, and you don't want to have sewage in your house or in your yard because that's kind of gross. For whatever reason, a lot of people don't like to have their access ports visible. Now, anybody who has a septic system has the same access ports that you do, so there's no real point in trying to hide any of the devices, because all it does is make it harder for the person that maintenances the system, or it makes it where you might forget that you have a septic system that needs pumping. One of the big things I always end up seeing is that when people have their systems buried, they forget all about them, and it ends up going 10, 15 years before they actually have anything serviced, and then they're surprised when things don't work. If you want something to function correctly, you have to take care of it the right way. The best way is pump it out regularly. Nowadays, risers are required on all septic systems to the surface, so that way you can properly maintain everything. On an older house, should you do it? Yes. Are you required to do it? No. It's a really good idea. You might be wondering, how much does something like this cost though? Generally in our area, I usually advise people to budget about $300 a foot, and that'll get you in the right ballpark. Obviously, the deeper your system is, the more expensive it's going to be to get one of these installed. You can install them yourself. It's really not that hard. The big thing is you want to get a good brand if you're doing it by yourself. Think about, for example, Polylock. That's the brand that I like to use because it's cheap, it's easy, and it's modular. So if you mess something up, guess what? Throw it away, start over, and it doesn't take that much more besides maybe 40 bucks. The benefit of that brand is that they also show you how to install the riser. And on top of that, it's relatively universal. So if you have a square lid, circle lid, 20-inch, 24-inch, the adapter plates will fit and you'll be perfectly fine. Most commonly, all of your lids are going to be about 24 inches round. The older ones are going to be about 24 inches square, but we no longer use square lids because square lids can fall into square holes. That's why you want circular lids. If you have a deep system, now you're going to need a machine, and those are not cheap. So mostly in our area, the moment you start getting into the 2 to 3 feet range, now you're in the ballpark of getting a machine to show up on your property. Most contractors will charge you a minimum of $800 just for the machine to show up before they even start doing any of the actual material costs. If you budget $800 to $1,500, if you have a reasonably deep tank, that'll put you in the right ballpark. If your tank is more than 6 foot deep, you're going to be in the $2 to $3 grand range just because that's so much more material, so much more effort to get your tank exposed. Our state doesn't really like having tanks that deep. It does happen from time to time, but it's usually on the older systems. So remember, the main benefit of having a riser on your septic system is so that we can pump the tank properly, maintain it the correct way, and that will help to improve and increase the longevity of your septic system. These systems are expensive. You want to make sure you take care of it. Pumping it regularly will get you so much further than just adding in additives or any of those bacterial things like, all the ones we see in Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco, or even on Amazon that don't really do anything. They claim that they do stuff, but they don't. Right. Pump the tank out and you'll have a much better time. Invest in a riser and it will pay itself off easily. If you don't have a lid on your septic system already, installing that riser for that one-time cost will usually pay itself back within a ballpark 2 pumpings. So it'll pay for itself in 4 years, 5 years, depending on your frequency. If you gained any value out of this, let me know. Do you have a riser on your septic system? Were you thinking about putting a riser on your septic system? I think every house should have one, not to make it easier for the pumper. That's a load of baloney if you hear people saying that. It actually serves a purpose to help clean your tank more effectively. I have videos posted every day on the world of wells, septic, home improvement, DIY projects, all that good stuff. Tune in tomorrow and I think you're going to enjoy that episode. Till next time, guys.